Give me some volume and go full screen.
What you know now, do you wish you had a third term? You know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony, I'd be fine with that.
We know he wasn't really running the country.
Yeah.
We used to think he was actually running the country, and now they're like, no, he didn't even see those executive orders. That was all auto.
Divorce rumors continue to escalate for the Obamas. Hopefully they can settle it like men. Terrible that you...
Barack Obama didn't fade into the shadows. He staged a cinematic sequel. Swapping the Oval Office for the glitz of Hollywood, he traded in press briefings for producer credits, presidential addresses for streaming specials. Picture it: a beachfront mansion, Netflix deals, and memoirs dropping like mixtapes, each one smoother than the last. But behind the camera-ready charm lies a deeper controversy. Critics like Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld aren't buying the polished persona. They're peeling back the layers, calling out a legacy they claim is long on swagger, short on substance. It's charisma versus critique, a showdown where the spotlight might just reveal more than expected. And yes, there's a production deal in the rub.
A glass of water? I'm serious. I'm thirsty. Can I get a glass of water? This is not a prank. You never seen it?
No.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Oh,
it's amazing.
no.
He gets a glass of Flint tap water, and I swear to God, he drinks it like this, like this.
Problem
He's
is solved?
bullshitting the world. Watch this.
Can I get some water? I really did need a glass of water. This is not a stunt.
Usually when something isn't a stunt, you have to say
It's
that.
100% a stunt. When was the last time a president stopped a speech to ask, can I get a glass of water? What? They would never do that. They would have water ready for him. No, you bring a fucking water.
Obama gay needing attention over an old letter. What? I should read that again. Anyway, no, we'll just keep going. The New York Post obtained a redacted portion of a handwritten letter the former president sent to his then college girlfriend, Alex McNear. Alex, eh? Back in 1982. He talked about his, quote, androgynous mind and wrote, and I'm quoting Obama here, I make love to men daily, but in the imagination.
Barack Obama strolled into the annals of history armed with a silver tongue, a polished pen, and the swagger of a man who believed optimism was a governing strategy. For 8 years, he delivered speeches that could make cynics swoon, graceful, grand, and gorgeously empty. It was as if the presidency had morphed into a global TED talk, complete with Secret Service and standing ovations. The crowd cheered like he'd split the atom every time he paused for effect. Beneath the poetry, policies that often floated more than they landed. A masterclass in saying everything while saying very little at all.
Obama surprised fans on our new podcast by saying her pet peeve about her husband is that he's chronically late. For example, we're still waiting on him to admit he's from Kenya. And as for Barack's pet peeve about Michelle, he's mad that she keeps leaving the toilet seat up. When she cleans it. When she cleans.
Joe Rogan circles the narrative like a shark scenting blood in waters clouded with nostalgia and polished sound bites. If you've ever debated the multiverse mid-deadlift or pondered ancient civilizations over elk meat, you already speak Joe's language. To him, Obama's legacy isn't that of a visionary leader. It's more like a polished open McKnight, where the punchlines never quite land. The moment Obama opened with his signature, "Let me be clear," Rogan didn't hear clarity. He heard the political equivalent of an interpretive dance. Elegant gestures, plenty of movement, but no real destination. It's not cynicism. It's X-ray vision for empty rhetoric, and Joe's not letting it slide. Enter Greg Gutfeld, armed with a razor-sharp smirk and enough sarcasm to fuel a late-night monologue. The man doesn't need a sledgehammer when a single eyebrow raise and a can of Red Bull will do. And with Obama, he's been handed a masterpiece of contradiction to dismantle. This is the guy who snagged a Nobel Peace Prize before he even unpacked his bags at the White House, then spent 2 terms raining drone strikes across the Middle East while being toasted by Hollywood like a rock star at a gala. It felt like watching a self-declared pacifist win a UFC belt during the weigh-in, then storm the cage wielding a steel chair, backed by a choir of swooning journalists, harmonizing his praises.
Number 44 wants to help the left censor more. Former President Obama, if that's his real name, is launching a campaign to stop the spread of disinformation, which he called a real challenge for our democracy. And also for his former VP, who's challenged by questions like, what's my name and why am I nude in the room?
Joe Rogan tackles foreign policy like a pit bull sinking its teeth into a pair of overpriced Italian loafers, relentless, unpressed, and not letting go. He's not here to politely analyze diplomacy. He's here to call it like a UFC ref watching a fighter flail under a barrage of drone strikes. When it comes to Obama's infamous red line in Syria, Rogan sees it the way a doomsday prepper sees a broken compass. Useless, unreliable, and still somehow capable of getting people hurt. The president's warning to Assad had all the urgency of a high school principal scolding a student for skipping lunch detention. Spoiler alert, Assad didn't blink, and the world noticed.
Obama said he was a jackass.
The young lady seems like a perfectly nice person. She's getting her award. What's he doing up there? He's a jack.
It's like, oh really? Well, you.
It was about the Taylor Swift thing.
Now, all this stuff.
That guy's a jack. It wasn't even that harsh of an incident. And he said it privately, and I think somebody heard it. I don't think he said it to be public.
I'm assuming all this stuff. Where's the pool? Come on, guys. Cut the president some slack.
Oh, here it is.
Seems like a perfectly nice person. She's getting her award.
Why would he do that?
He's a jack. No.
Gutfeld zeroes in on the economy like a stand-up comic roasting leftovers at a black tie banquet. And nothing gets the slow roast treatment quite like Obama's infamous shovel-ready jobs promise, a phrase that aged like milk in the sun. Gutfeld spins it into a full-blown Broadway farce. Shovel-ready? The only thing truly ready was the public's eagerness to swallow anything dressed up in poetic optimism. It was like ordering a thick, juicy steak and being handed a lavender-scented candle with grill marks drawn on it. The economic recovery limped out of the 2008 crater like a college kid crawling out of finals week, exhausted, overhyped, and barely functional. And yet, we got recovery summer, rebranded and recycled year after year like a seasonal flavor no one really liked. Its success was measured by how often you could say a phrase with a straight face. Obama was a world champion. And Joe? He can't help but marvel at the irony. Here's Obama, the supposed champion of Main Street, rubbing elbows with Wall Street executives at Goldman Sachs events like a band roadie who forgot his gear but still wants to play lead guitar. He bailed out the banks, left homeowners gasping for air, and then hit the stage like a lifeguard who just tossed out the floaties and claimed he taught the country how to swim. Then comes healthcare. Gutfeld's next punchline, delivered with surgical sarcasm. Obamacare, the crown jewel of domestic reform, was pitched like a miracle cure, but delivered more like a glitchy medical Groupon. Universal coverage? It felt more like a bureaucratic escape room with puzzles written by the DMV. The website rollout was so disastrous it made MySpace look like Amazon. And through it all, there was Obama, grinning like a wedding DJ, blissfully unaware the speakers were literally on fire.
Let's admit it, America. We miss Barack Obama.
Juan does.
There he is. In a recent speech, he said he had no real scandals in his White House. The jab at Trump.
We didn't have a scandal that embarrassed us. I know that seems like a low bar. Generally speaking, you didn't hear about a lot of drama inside our White House.
No drama. So to quote the TSA officer whose dog just sniffed my carry-on, let's unpack this. So why didn't you hear much about O's White House? Well, who was brave enough to look? There was never a cozier relationship between a president and the media, ever. If the White House were a bed, the press was the mud.
Joe Rogan dives headfirst into the cultural riptide. Because under Obama, America didn't just tiptoe into identity politics. It cannonballed in, limbs flailing, straight into a pool of hashtags, pronouns, and performative wokeness. What was once a call for unity quickly splintered into a kaleidoscope of labels, grievances, and curated victimhood. Rogan, who makes a living wading through the uncomfortable, couldn't ignore the irony. The man who promised to bring the country together somehow left it more categorized than a Whole Foods snack aisle. Meanwhile, Gutfeld takes aim at Obama's intellectual mystique with sniper precision. He mocks the idea that you needed a secret decoder ring to unlock the man's brilliance, when all you really needed was the stamina to endure an hour of beautifully spoken nothing without falling into a trance-like nap. And then comes the surveillance state, the part of Obama's legacy Joe tears into like a sci-fi critic reviewing real life. The man who ran on transparency oversaw the ballooning of the NSA into a digital monster. This wasn't just about tracking terrorists. It was the government eavesdropping on your grandma's banana bread recipe and calling it national security. Obama didn't dismantle the deep state. He upgraded it, gift-wrapped it, and smiled while handing over the keys. Greg Gutfeld grabs the legacy paintbrush and hurls sarcasm across Obama's presidential portrait, like a caffeinated Jackson Pollock at a gallery opening. He zeroes in on the Iran deal, a diplomatic gamble that looked less like strategic negotiation and more like placing billions on a rigged roulette wheel spinning in Tehran. Imagine handing stacks of cash to a regime shouting death to America, while flashing the grin of someone who thinks they've just negotiated world peace and backstage passes to logic. Gutfeld imagines Obama, blindfolded, casually shaking hands with the Ayatollah, surrounded by diplomats all reading different versions of the same script, none of which end well. Then comes the immigration paradox, and Greg doesn't just poke the piñata. He breaks the stick. Here's a president who deported more people than any of his predecessors, yet stood before cheering crowds delivering poetic speeches that felt like lullabies for progressive dreamers. Rogan adds his punch. Picture Obama at the foot of the Statue of Liberty, waxing lyrical about hope and inclusion, only to pull a hidden lever that drops thousands of dreamers through a bureaucratic trapdoor. It wasn't sanctuary. It was sleight of hand wrapped in applause and polished press releases.
Or you go after other Democrats. Let the primaries start now. Go after Newsom, or, go after Fetterman. Go after somebody. The media will gobble that up. Or you go after some foreign leader. Take an axe to Chi, or go after the cartels or something. Get yourself banned from travel somewhere, okay? Mm-hmm. And then go after some CEO. Go after some big fat cat CEO that's just like hurting his workers and just running up prices. Go after that guy. And then you go on Rogan and you laugh at yourself. That is the recipe for getting attention without going after Donald Trump. Because every time you clash with Trump, you lose, and you look like you don't care about the rest of the American people.
And we've talked a lot about how the Democrats are trying to find the answer to Trump. They're trying to find the analog to him. But part of Obama's comments, too, he said, stop looking for the quick fix. Stop looking for the Messiah. You have a great candidates running races right now. Just focus on what you have in front of you.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you listen to Obama and you look at these inorganic protests, they say you have to have courage, rally, act, resist, but they don't. For what? What is the actual issue? When Trump owns every issue 80-20 by almost every metric, from the economy to crime to immigration, where are you? The high ground maneuver of common sense has relegated it into more extreme measures. Ask Obama, okay, where do I apply this courage? What space do I park it in? Should I double down on trans dudes in women's sports? Should I back the attacks on ICE? Should I show?
Gutfeld swoops in with a smirk, aiming his sarcasm at the star-studded orbit Obama seemed to thrive in. From Beyonce to Spielberg, it often felt like Obama wasn't so much governing as he was curating the ultimate celebrity Instagram feed. State dinners looked less like diplomatic functions and more like VIP lounges at the Met Gala, except with nuclear codes tucked beneath the caviar. Greg paints the image. Obama, standing in front of a gold-framed mirror, rehearsing his cadence by candlelight, the room scented with Tom Ford cologne and ego. This wasn't leadership, it was aesthetic governance. Meticulously crafted, fact-checked, and backed by a jazz playlist designed to sound profound. And Joe? He never forgets Chicago. How could he? That's where Obama rose to power, while seemingly ignoring the systemic rot all around him. Spiraling gang violence, failing public schools, and entrenched poverty weren't just statistics. They were fixtures in his ideological backyard. Rogan doesn't mince words. You don't get to fly over a crater and call it a garden. Chicago became a living contradiction. Everything Obama claimed to care about, yet somehow always beneath his action threshold. Then comes the climate irony. Obama, champion of green policy, arriving at climate summits in Air Force One, delivering speeches about sustainability before jetting off with swag bags and hollow pledges. He promised green jobs like a kid handing out lemonade coupons during a blizzard. Well-meaning but wildly disconnected. Gutfeld jokes that Obama probably had a solar panel installed on his golf cart, just to virtue flex during tea time at Martha's Vineyard.
Part of the reason it's hard to bring about change is because we live in a media environment that elevates falsehoods as much as truths and divides people as much as it brings them together. Through the Obama Foundation, we're working to empower and equip emerging leaders to tackle issues like the spread of disinformation. Of course, as plenty of people immediately pointed out, it was Obama's Democratic allies who cooked up the Russian collusion hoax. Or how about Nick Sandmann, hands up, don't shoot, don't say gay, or the Hunter laptop story. They're all stories where the public was shielded from the truth with help from the Democratic-friendly legacy media, who try to diss any information that threatens their narrative. And by narrative, I mean...
Rogan comes in swinging with a haymaker straight at the post-presidency glow-up. Obama's no longer just a former president. He's a global brand. Podcast host, Netflix producer, motivational speaker perched atop an oceanfront mansion, preaching climate responsibility like a monk in goosey robes. It's like watching a man who once sold hope now selling inspirational merch to the very followers still wearing his old campaign buttons. You don't get to sound the alarm about rising sea levels while sipping Mai Tais from a beachfront balcony 5 feet above Atlantis. Then Gutfeld pounces on the race issue. Obama had a once-in-a-generation shot, a true chance to unify, to rise above the noise, to lead a country towards something genuinely post-racial. Instead, he sprinkled division like it was parmesan over every national conversation. Greg imagines Obama delivering speeches like a poetic philosopher while quietly ghostwriting the user manual for Twitter mobs. It wasn't about honest progress. It was about framing dissent as moral failure, draping guilt in elegant rhetoric and calling it leadership. Disagree with his healthcare plan? Rogan doesn't ignore the arrogance either. That cool smirk, that slow, measured, professor on tenure gaze, it didn't read as confidence. It felt like a political eye roll wrapped in a TED talk. Joe calls it Harvard swagger, where the IQ is presumed and the accountability is always someone else's problem. Obama fielded questions like they were beneath him, unless they came from Vanity Fair columnists or a room full of Ivy League interns. And when the criticism finally came, his skin was thinner than the 2010 economic recovery graph.
When they gave that speech, when he gave a speech on television, and everybody was like, fuck this. And then they it kind of just went away.
It was one of the most beautiful moments in modern American history. People really actually stood up and stopped a war from happening.
Today, I authorize the Armed Forces of the United States to begin a limited military action in Libya in support of an international effort to protect...
Gutfeld isn't loosening his grip on the education debacle anytime soon. For a man so idolized by academia, Obama did remarkably little to lift the schools crumbling in his ideological backyard. Greg scoffs at the irony. While inner-city classrooms fell apart like forgotten science projects, the administration was busy greenlighting grants to study whether squirrels get seasonal depression from climate change. School choice? Off the table. Parental involvement? Optional. But if you were in the mood for a TED talk on systemic challenges, Obama had a 40-slide PowerPoint, a breakout session, and a think tank on standby. Then Joe steps in to land the first round closer. Obama, he says, was the smoothest salesman in modern politics. Charming, articulate, camera ready. But what was he selling? Cool, minty, meticulously branded air. You inhaled it and felt noble, uplifted, even as your insurance premium doubled and your local VA clinic couldn't find your paperwork. That was the trick, the illusion. The man didn't govern. He narrated America's decline like a calm podcast host with a backswing. And the performance isn't over, not even close. Behind the applause and polished speeches, there's still glitter in the illusion, more myths dressed up as milestones. Symbolic trophies gather dust in the glass case of a legacy built on elegantly worded placeholders. Obama turned rhetoric into a stand-in for results, and America bought the merch. And just when you think the credits are rolling, there he is again. Backlit, best-selling, Netflix deal in hand. Memoir number 7 dropping like clockwork, every 14 minutes.
If you watch Fox News on a regular basis, it is a constant menu. They will find, like, folks who make me mad.
So let's analyze. He says Fox goes out of its way to locate and then demonize the poor. For what reason? So we can kill and eat them? His criticism is absurd because he never suggests a motive. FNC is always focused on policies that keep the poor poor, not the...
Joe Rogan can't help but crack up. Here's a guy who spent 8 years sidestepping real accountability, now packaging life advice like he's the Dalai Lama with a drone strike authorization code. This isn't leadership, it's lifestyle branding at its most elite. Obama didn't just leave office. He launched a content empire. Podcasts, memoirs, Netflix specials. It's less post-presidency, more prestige streaming franchise. Gutfeld dives in like it's the final punchline at a roast. Obama didn't retire. He pivoted. Now he's narrating tales of American hardship from the balcony of a beachfront mansion worth more than most cities' school budgets. It's like watching a motivational speaker sell minimalist living while broadcasting from a Versailles estate. The irony practically screams. Reality has to clear a security checkpoint before it gets anywhere near him. Rogan snorts at the symbolism overload. Obama taught a generation to mistake tone for truth, optics for outcomes. And now, he's cashing in on that confusion like a Silicon Valley CEO who just discovered keynote speaking. The country didn't evolve. It got better at pretending things were deep because they were delivered with cinematic pauses and a slow, serious stare, all style. No spine. Just carefully curated charisma in a custom-tailored shell.